We've seen before that living things are really diverse and they come in all different shapes and sizes. So one of the most important things that biologists need to do is to classify different organisms, different living things. And classification is an important branch of biology that science need to do. One of the best methods to classify things is to make this thing called a dichotomous key. And keys help us to classify organisms. They help to classify. So what we're going to do now is have a look at two different types of dichotomous keys, and we'll use buttons as an example, close buttons, because it's a bit easier to start basic before we start looking at actual organisms to classify them. So the two different types of dichotomous keys are a chart, which is this one here, and a table. And if we look at the chart and the table, we can see that they both involve asking a question that only has two answers. So looking here on the chart, we can see that the first question is to say, out of all of the buttons, which ones are round and which ones are straight-sided. So there are only two options. And over on the table, again, question 1, we look at the two options A and B, which are, is it round or does it have straight sides? So a dichotomous key always involves asking a question with two answers. It has only two answers. And in fact, the word dichotomous means cutting in half or cutting into two. So looking back at the chart now, let's follow down the dichotomous key to try and classify one button. Let's look at this one here, which is blue and round and striped. So we can use our chart to look at the first question. Is this button round or is it straight? We can see that it's round. So now we look at the next step down. Does this button have 2 holes or 4 holes? And we can see that it has 2 holes. Now the next question says, is that button plain or is it striped? And we'll circle striped. So now we've classified our button. It's round with 2 holes and it's striped. And every other button we could classify by asking the same questions and following down to the bottom of the chart. Looking at the table version, we can do the same thing. It just works a little bit differently. So let's classify this button here, which is green and has straight sides. So in the table, we look at question 1, and the two options say, is it round or is it straight? And it has straight sides. So then it says, go to 6, which means we skip all of the questions until we get to number 6 down here. And again, we look at the two different options. Is this button 3-sided or is it 4-sided? And we'll look back up at our button. We can see that it has 4 sides. So it's 4-sided. Now we go to number 7. Question 7. Its two options are, does it have 2 holes or does it have 4 holes? And we'll look back at our button. It only has 2 holes. So we go to the table that says 7A, and here's our button. classified. So the table version, it works a little bit differently, but we still classify every button into its own little category.